Hello, friends. Welcome back again. Some of you, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate you guys liking the video, subscribing. If you do enjoy the video, we got some new information on Monster Hunter Rise that just came out today. We have some interviews with the producer and the director of the game, Ichinose. So let's get right into it and let's see what kind of new information they have for us about the game. This is an article from Eurogamer by Martin Robinson. And let's just get right into the questions that they start asking the producer and the director. So Tsujimoto is the producer. And obviously he's been with Monster Hunter for a long time. They ask him, let's start with an easy one. How long has this been in development for? He basically says that this has been in development since Monster Hunter Generations came out about 4 or 5 years ago. They gave Ichinose a small break, and then they asked him to continue onto the next portable series. And at the time, it hadn't been released, but they were talking about it being the next Switch title. They also confirmed that they were using the Resident Evil engine, which had not been released, and the first game that it was used on was the Resident Evil 7 game. So they also asked, development had started before Monster Hunter World came out. Did you ever explore bringing Monster Hunter World to Switch? And a million people have asked this question. Basically, they said no. So essentially, they didn't want to bring it over to the Switch because Monster Hunter World was developed for the PlayStation and other home generation consoles, so it wouldn't really make sense to play Monster Hunter World on the Switch because it's more of a portable design, and it just wouldn't really make sense with the theme of the game. The next question was, how much of a challenge was it to get the Resident Evil engine working on the Switch? Basically, he says it was a challenge, but they also it's a Capcom internal engine, so they had the benefits of all the knowledge and the engineers to help them ensure that the game would be working as well as it actually could. They are targeting a comfortable 30 frames per second, so I don't think we can ask for much more on the Switch there. They basically said it's a challenging but rewarding experience. Obviously, this is the first time that Monster Hunter has been on the Resident Evil engine. I know you won't be able to talk too much about future titles, but does that mean that Monster Hunter will be using the RE engine on games going forward? And Tsujimoto actually replies to this one saying, actually putting aside Monster Hunter as a series, the Resident Evil engine is Capcom's latest up-to-date internal engine. I think it's our goal to have overall as many of our games as possible run in on our new engine. So that makes sense. That probably means that the next Monster Hunter game after Rise will definitely also be on the Monster Hunter will also be on the Resident Evil engine. I know that you won't be able to talk about Nintendo's plans at all, but I find it interesting that there's a lot of quiet, high-profile titles coming out next March. And speculation about even a new Switch. If in theory there was a new Switch, would you be positioned to take advantage of that? He says, we actually have no idea whether or not there is going to be a new Switch coming down the pipeline, but he does say that there are 2 different Switch hardwares that they are targeting, and because they have to keep in mind that the Switch Lite is already a thing out into the market, so they have to be able to make a game that can target owners of the Switch Lite while also targeting people who own a regular Switch that will be playing it docked and portable as well. To speak more to the design side, as it's going for more of a portable audience, what are some of the things missing in the home-based console of Monster Hunter World that you're excited to bring back for Rise? Ichinose says certainly one of the biggest things that comes to mind straight away is local wireless play. This is huge because a lot of the Japanese player base really made the Monster Hunter series so big through local wireless play. It was a huge part of the community when Monster Hunter was first on PSP. It was a game that people loved taking places and playing with others locally. And honestly, why wouldn't you? This is like almost an MMO style game, but you can play locally with others without Wi-Fi. I mean, well, that's just amazing. Continuing on, it's something that's not achievable on traditional home consoles, and it's part of the series going back a long time. Yeah, exactly. So it's really great to be able to bring your Switches together and even play when you're offline or haven't got access to the internet. That is huge. Also, it expands upon the idea that it's like more of a pick up and play kind of game. That's a different gameplay experience than sitting on your couch, which he's 100% right. I think this game is obviously going to be the answer for Monster Hunter New York. All of those dudes are going to be able to bring their Switches and meet at Waypoint and have a great time. Anyway, continuing on, I think I'm something of an outlier, but someone like myself, I probably spent about 60 to 70% of my time playing my Switch docked. So how do you take into the consideration of that kind of player as well? It's a full-on Monster Hunter experience, which you can play on the television and really get sucked into, and it's also easy to pick up and play and enjoy in your own pace in whatever size or bite-sized chunk that you might want to make out of it. Certainly as well, the fact that the game has these new elements of exploration and traversal, I think that it's a great adaptability of the content, whether the players wants to, sit down on with your dock Switch and your controller and get really sucked into the huge world, or whether you have more personal feelings of having your hunter to hand anytime. And we want to be able to cover both types of experience equally as well. The question was asked that was Monster Hunter World more geared towards the West, and is Monster Hunter Rise more geared towards traditional Japanese audience? He said they really make each title on their own terms. They really just kind of find the theme of that game and then work towards that theme. So it's difficult to say your assumption was correct, because I think we're all just kind of on a different mindset. Is Ryozo's answer to that question. The next question, just following up from that, there was also a perception that there was some sort of silliness of Monster Hunter that, while it was still in world, wasn't quite as pronounced. Actually, to be more explicit, a friend was upset that the "so tasty" quote had gone and was asking if you could bring it back. That's hilarious, because I actually also missed the "so tasty" quote. Ryozo answered and did say that "so tasty" is in the game. He said that there's actually an extra level of voice clips in general, which you may have noticed from watching the footage. A lot of us noticed that in the footage, hunters were actually speaking while fighting the monsters, which was a totally new thing. We've never heard hunters really speak outside of cutscenes at all. So honestly, the cutscenes were the first time we'd even heard hunters speak in the first place. What is really nice is that regardless of what your feelings are on the vocal additions, they did give you an option to actually turn off these voice clips. You can reduce them to either the classic grunts, or you can turn on Japanese or English voice options, which is really great. One of the biggest questions surrounding Rise is, are you adding a new weapon? And this is what they asked him right here. Some people are asking when it's going to be time for that 15th weapon. Sujimoto says, I promise I'm not just stubbornly refusing to answer, but it's really impossible to answer. I think what they're trying to say is that they don't really want to add a new weapon until they absolutely feel it's necessary. Because right now, they have a very big roster of weapons. 14 weapons is quite a lot of weapons. Think about other games that use weapons as a class. What other game has 14 different unique weapons that all have different combos? That's a lot of weapons. And for people to ask for a 15th, although it's been done in the series before, I don't think it's necessarily the biggest deal right now. I think what is so awesome that the Monster Hunter team is working on is just making the combat feel so much better. And I think that was the best improvement in Iceborne, is all of the weapon combos that we got, the improvements to every single weapon. But they are even going further in Rise, and they are giving us new weapon combos that involve something even more specific, the wire bug. So Ryozo continues on, and he says, and we also have many new ways to increase the depth of gameplay that aren't fixated on the idea for an extra weapon. For example, the wire bug mechanic. It adds something to each weapon, each and every existing weapon. They all have many ways that you can combine the wire bug with. And that way of taking something which adds onto all 14 weapons adds depth. And that wouldn't be the same as just trying to add different weapons. I really appreciate Ryozo's take on the different weapons and the idea that I think that they just kind of get annoyed whenever someone asks if they're adding a new weapon, because they are getting so in-depth and so complex with the combos and all of the variety in each one individual weapon that I think that they're almost annoyed when people ask for new weapons, because their weapons are so thought out and so calculated. But anyway, this is our first article. Let's move on to our next article. This was the article from Eurogamer again, and the next article we have is from Reno Gazette Journal by Jason Hidalgo. Let's skip right to his questions. He actually did have a post on Reddit asking people to contribute to his interview, so let's see how his questions shaped up. How did you come up with the idea for the Wirebug? That's a great question. Ichinose said, the last game I worked on was Monster Hunter Generations, and after that I felt I was pretty much done with the actions as far as the classic series was concerned. So with Monster Hunter Rise, I wanted to add something completely new. That's a great idea, Ichinose. Since the game was going to have seamless maps, I wanted to have something else that was more fun when it came to moving, and that's where the idea for the Wirebug came about. Monster Hunter World already had a strong exploratory element, and I wanted to expand on that further by allowing you to go wherever you want with the Wirebug. You can use it to climb up walls, reach places you normally can't get to, in order to find all sorts of hidden areas. In addition, for movement, I also wanted to integrate it into the moveset for hunters, which allows you to perform new actions. Damn, Ichinose is so smart. Speaking of actions, do Wirebug arts work like the old hunter arts? Do we have to select them from a list? Or are there moves for a specific weapon accessible at any times? That's a great question as well. Ichinose says you can use the available Wirebug arts for a weapon anytime. So that means we are not restricted to selecting a certain number of arts. That is kind of really nice to know. So they are basically a part of our combos. Can you talk about the idea behind the Palamute dog partner and how it came about? Are you considering Palamute skin options like Amaterasu from Okami or Wolflink from Legend of Zelda? We've always received a lot of fan feedback for some kind of dog companion since we only had Palicos in the past. A lot of people wanted to be able to go hunt with dogs, which is something that we're now able to do in Rise. Riozo says, as far as the skins and crossovers, we have some skins and layered armor for Palamutes, but we don't have any collaborations planned yet for something like Amaterasu or Link Wolf. The development team is still working hard at finishing the game, but that's something that we're looking forward to in the future. So, no collaborations as of yet, but that doesn't rule any out, that's for sure. Will the weapons and armor designs from existing monsters be based on classic Monster Hunter or World? Ichinose says, for monsters returning from Monster Hunter World, we will be using the armor from World. For monsters that were in older titles, we will use the older armor and polish them up to look a little bit nicer. And for monsters that appeared in both games, Old and in World, we will use the newest designs from World. However, since Monster Hunter World also had the slinger as part of the armor, some changes will need to be made, obviously, because there's no slinger. Will there be an option for layered weapons and armor? Yes. Ooh, that's nice to know about the weapons. How does multiplayer work in this game, and will you be able to play both story quests and non-story quests like World? Ichinose says, it will be a bit different from World. Monster Hunter Rise uses a more classic style of gameplay where the quests are separated into single-player village quests and multiplayer gathering hub quests. And the Monster Hunter community rejoiced! The gathering hub quests will also have cutscenes, but you can skip them anytime you want. Hallelujah! You will also not be required to reach certain progression in the story in order to play quests together at the Gathering Hub. What is the player scaling like for hunts? Will monster health or HP change depending on the number of players? Ichinose, yes. Monster Hunter Rise will have scaling based on the number of players, just like World. How will armor skills and decorations work in the game? Will it be more like World or will it be classic Monster Hunter? That's something that we can't talk about at this time. So they are not telling us how armor skills and decorations work in this game yet. Is it still the classic style? Is it going to be a return to World? We are not sure. Will the aim mechanic for ranged weapons be like World? And will there be support for motion-based aiming like with Zelda? It's based on the system in World, but it's not 100% the same because we have to adapt to the Switch platform, so it will have some unique elements. And yes, you can use the motion controls for aiming as well. Will there be event schedule and regular updates just like in World? For Monster Hunter World, we assumed most people will be playing online all the time, so we use specific system for event quests. But this time, since Monster Hunter Rise will be on the Switch and not everyone will be online all the time, we decided to use the classic system like we did for Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, where you can download quests in advance. Man, I feel like this is just like a party of answers for people who just wanted all the old shit. Just like Monster Hunter World, it seems that hunters no longer do the flex motion or guts pose from classic games when drinking potions. Ichinose said, "Yes, there's a lot of quality of life improvements from World that we're bringing into Monster Hunter Rise, and we've heard a lot of fan feedback, so we're bringing stuff that people like and moving away from things that people don't like." Ryozo essentially said that they took away the flexing pose because they wanted to make the gameplay as smooth as possible. He said, "Since we got rid of the separate sections and Rise is using seamless locales, we decided to get rid of the flex pose as well." How will the monster count compare to past titles? Will it be closer to something like Generations Ultimate or World? Here's Sujimoto's response. "We get asked this question all the time, and we don't really have an answer for it because we're not focused on the number of monsters when we create a game. For every game, we have a new concept or theme that we're working with. Then, as we develop the game, we look at which monsters fit that theme and new system and which ones would be most fun to fight, and then that's what we base the number of monsters on. We don't really look at the actual number of monsters." That means that essentially they're only worried about making monsters that fit this game. And if a monster doesn't really fit the aesthetic of this game, then they're not going to put it in this game just to have a higher monster count, right? Moving on. Can you talk about the potential of a G rank, master rank game / tempered monsters from World or Deviants and Generation? They basically said wait for further details. Will Monster Hunter Rise have unique Monster Hunter language as an option? Yep, we went over this. There's already 3 voices that you can choose from: Japanese, English, and Monster Hunter language, just like in World. And that leads us to our last interview, the IGN interview. And they have 7 facts or 8 facts for us here. So let's get right to the first one. The new normal naming convention. So Monster Hunter games are now no longer going to be numbered 1 through 5, 1 through 6. They're not going to be numbered like those past games. Nowadays, Monster Hunter games are going to be named according to the general appeal and the general theme of the game. Monster Hunter World was a worldwide release and very much focused on creating a environment and a seamless environment and an open type of experience, and Rise is very much focused on the verticality. So those are things, those are the types of names that we're going to be seeing moving forward. Rise is very much its own unique thing. So Ichinose is basically just saying that they did want to bring a lot of things over from Monster Hunter World, but it is not just a carbon copy of World. It's very much its own unique game, and it was focused and made exactly just for the Switch as its only platform. It is its own brand new game. It is not a spin-off. It is a brand new Monster Hunter game. Something we saw from the last interview, but this is really nice to know that single player and multiplayer quests are separated. So in previous games that were not Monster Hunter World, you had a set of village quests and a set of gathering hub quests. These are now back to being separated in Monster Hunter Rise, and they are not one in the same like in Monster Hunter World. Monster Hunter Rise cutscenes can be skipped. So for all of those Monster Hunter World players who were absolutely dying to skip the cutscenes, including myself, because we've seen them a few times and we just want to play with friends, they can now be skipped. And it's nice that you can still go back and enjoy them whenever you like at your own leisure. So that's always nice. If no, Monster Hunter Rise is not inspired by The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is rather surprising. All about the wire bug and more surprises to come. Everyone is associating the wire bugs with Hunter Arts, but honestly, I think a better assumption would be to liken the wire bugs to the new moves that we got in the Iceborne expansion. Every single weapon in the Iceborne expansion got brand new moves, at least 1 or 2 new moves. Well, I think that is very much like what the wire bug is going to do for each weapon. I think it's not going to be like an art where you can just select it every once in a while. These are going to be things that you can use regularly in all of your combos. Icons are being adapted to suit the Nintendo Switch's small screen. That is really dope. They are even changing some of the item icons. So this antidote actually looks like a freaking antidote and not just like a blue potion. That's really cool. And they also found out that there won't be any voice chat compatibility with the Switch, which is honestly super disappointing. Also, Prowler mode will not be returning. So that's it, my friends. That is all of the new information from the interviews that we have received. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like, consider subscribing. More Monster Hunter content coming. All right, take care.